Well, good afternoon for most of you. Some of you are on the West Coast, so good morning still. And I'm glad you're all here. I'm Craig McAfee, the Executive Director and CEO of the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers. We are recording today's webinar so that we can post it on our website after the 4th of July holiday. But I wanted to give a warm welcome to everybody briefly and say, hey, look, we are an organization has 4 strong pillars. The first one's overarching all the things that are going on with the transition over the last decade from Industry 3.0 to Industry 4.0 and all those things that we talk about in robotics and additive manufacturing, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, everything connected to the internet. But coupled with that, work-based learning. And then that's what today's webinar and member drop-ins really focused on. We've got 3 amazing folks from our board who have written articles in our newsletter, which I'll put in the chat in a minute, so you have reference to that, talking about work-based learning and promising and best practices across the nation. And so every quarter we do one of these and decide to focus on one of our pillars, and I'll talk more about the other 2 at the end of our webinar today. But I want to turn it over to Craig Lamb, who's our president of the board this year from Rowan Cabarrus Community College. She's been a wonderful board director for many years and a great advocate for all that we're doing today and beyond. So without further ado, Craig Lamb, please welcome to our webinar and member drop-in. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Craig. It's always nice to just keep handing things down from Craig to Craig. It's really my pleasure today to introduce our panelists for the drop-in. Each one of them is a member of our board of directors for the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers, and they're also leaders in their colleges and in their communities. We have 3 presenters today, and I will introduce them in maybe not the order they'll be presenting, but we'll see. Alicia Uday is the director of the for Polytechnic Outreach at Bismarck State College in Bismarck, South Dakota. And she's also treasurer for the NCATC board. Alicia's role at Bismarck State includes development of business and industry leadership teams and direction of student experiential learning partnerships. So that's really the big piece for today, is her work with engaging for internships and such. Harriet Happel, gives wave there, Harriet. Is the Dean of Career Education and Integrative Learning at the College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita, California. Today, she's at Ventura College, that's because she wanted to get to the beach. Among her many responsibilities, Harriet serves as the project manager for her Advanced Technology Center, and she manages the California Apprenticeship Incentive Grants. Linda Head, Linda is up there in my corner, is the Senior Associate Vice Chancellor for External and Employer Relations, the longest title of the day, at Lone Star College in Houston, Texas. Linda's work in support of student, corporate, and economic development has helped Lone Star College become a leader in workforce engagement. Our moderator today is Becky Epps, who serves as the manager of the Center for Workforce Innovation at St. Louis Community College in, guess where, St. Louis, Missouri. Join me in welcoming our panel, and I'll turn over the microphone to Becky to get things rolling. Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. I did just hear from Alicia. She's trying to get in right now, so she may have to go last. When I hand it over, we might give her a minute to settle. So we'll probably go Harriet, and then Linda, and then Alicia, if that works for everyone. But I'm just going to call your name. And if you could just introduce yourself and what school you're with and what your position is, we just like to hear who we have with us. So I have the list. So I'll just go down the list. Anthony.
Have a lunch break here soon coming up.
Good afternoon. I'm Tony Ponder. I'm the provost at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio.
Thank you, Tony. And I knew that, and I still said Anthony. That's what was on my form.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
All right. All right, Carrie.
Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Motley. I'm on Craig Lamb's team here at Rowan Cabarrus Community College. I'm the Apprenticeship Director and Business Service Account Manager.
Great, Carrie. Welcome. Thanks. Greg Jones. You're muted, Greg, if you're trying to talk.
Yeah, sorry, I was multitasking. It's Greg Jones. I'm the Vice President of Smart Force Development at AMT, the Association for Manufacturing Technologies, and I am currently on the board at NCATC as well as a strategic partner member.
Thanks, Greg. All right, and Greg Sanders.
Hi, I'm Greg Sanders. I'm an architect actually from Henneberry Eddy Architects in Portland, and we are also a strategic partner to NCATC, and we specialize in CT kind of projects.
Great, thanks, Greg. Thanks for joining us today. I am going to hand it over to to Harriet. Real quick before I do that, as other people join, if they have questions or something, I'll have them introduce themselves then. I won't be stopping anyone. But while you're hearing the recaps from the stories from the newsletter, just kind of be thinking about what your college is doing at that time and be ready to share. And if you want to put your hand up and ask a question, I'll be keeping an eye on that, and I'll be able to call out on folks. And I will have to step in if anyone is talking too long. So just warning you on that one. But Harriet, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, and welcome everyone. As you saw in the newsletter, College of the Canyons has been working in this realm of work-based learning and the continuum as defined by Jobs for the Future for several years now. And I think what's so important, as Craig was referencing the evolution we've had from Industry 3.0 to 4.0 and really soon to be 5.0, the hallmark of Industry 5.0 is how do we do human-centered work in light of the technology, the AI, all of the other changes that we're seeing in workforce. And really the answer to that is work-based learning. The focus of work-based learning really is how do we amplify what is human-centered work and how do we prepare our students for that human-centered work. And we often think in terms of skills as they relate to our programs of study, but we often hear employers say over and over again, hey, we can train for the technical skills. What we really need the community college to do is train for those essential skills that demonstrate workforce readiness. And at College of the Canyons, we identify this as the 5 C's: critical thinking, creative thinking, communication, collaboration. And then with the advent of the COVID pandemic and how we've emerged out of that and really have sought to meet our students where they're at, we've added comfort with uncertainty, because we see the number one barrier for our students being successful in workforce is really having the confidence that they're ready for work and that they can do the work. And so how do we give them opportunities to be able to work out that lack of comfort and develop the confidence that's needed in today's workforce? And that's what we do through work-based learning. So we work across the curriculum, both with transfer courses and CTE, to integrate what we call project-based learning within the classroom. And we encourage the faculty to work with an industry partner, whether they be profit or nonprofit, to create a project that identifies a problem. What is that wicked problem that industry seeks to address? And then how can the students, through a design thinking application, come up with probable solutions for the problem? And the idea here is that they're not going to solve the problem, but what are they going to learn in trying to solve the problem? And that's where the 5 C's come into play. Currently, we have less than 10% of our faculty really engaging in project-based learning in a significant way, but the number continues to grow every year. The college has had to put a lot of resources behind professional development, and it's really truly paying off in terms of the faculty being our champions for this. And of course, we completely support the idea that industry is our co-educator in this work that we do. So we are showing growth. We're showing students that easily transition to internships, and then to workforce through their project-based learning experiences. It also gives them the platform by which they can start to build their personal brand, which we know in this automated world and the use of social media is critical, especially as you're looking at platforms like LinkedIn, where you develop a LinkedIn profile. And in that, students can create more or less a portfolio that demonstrates to employers what they have to bring to the table. And it's proving to be very effective in terms of their job placement opportunities. So we have nowhere to go but up. But I think what is unique is that we're at all times focusing on what is the human-centered work that they're going to be able to excel in, regardless of the point of program of study as we go forward in Industry 5.0.
Thank you, Harriet. We're going to hand it over to Linda. Go ahead, Linda.
Hello, good afternoon or morning. Thanks for joining us today. 14 years ago, Lone Star College centralized all of workforce education. The customized training through our corporate college, continuing ed at all 7 of our campuses, and the development of degrees and certificates in the AAX applied world. We also were given the opportunity to lead advisory councils for the chancellor that have more of a strategic outlook for the direction of the college and the development of potential bonds and donations of equipment and grants and things. So that's all centralized also. And with that, we've developed some cool relationships. One came in 2020. I was in the car and on my way to Austin on vacation, and the CEO of a multinational manufacturing company was stuck in Houston because of COVID. And he and his 3 vice presidents were bemoaning the fact that so many people had left. This was June of 2020. People were quitting and retiring. COVID was difficult. And also actually living in Houston and not traveling around the world all the time, he participated in his nonprofit boards and realized they weren't doing as good a job as they hoped in recruiting from diverse, low socioeconomic neighborhoods, first generation of college. So he said, what can we do? So this is the end of the first year of a really cool program, and they are fully funding 2 cohorts. One is CNC machining, the other is mechanical engineering. Last year, a year and a half ago, we recruited out of our dual credit machining students out of one of our 12 ISDs. They came to the high school, high level folks recruited. And then once the kids decided they were going to do it, 10 of them, they gave them a full-time job at the company in the summer after they registered for their fall classes for their second year of their AAS. So talk about work-based learning. Right out of high school, they had full-time helper jobs in a huge automated manufacturing plant, 3 locations. We even got them transportation back and forth every day. They started their classes in the fall for their second year. They gave them a part-time job while they were going to school last year, so that, again, what they were learning at Lone Star College, they were taking in practice at NOV every day. And they had a mentor applied to these 10 men and women. We had a dedicated workforce advisor at the college to provide case management as well. They graduated. It's awesome. We've recruited the second 10 for this next cohort, and we start again this summer. They're registered for their fall classes again for their second year, and they will continue. And NOV gives them a job in the summer, a part-time job while they go to school. They pay for their tuition, their work shirts, their books. It is a fantastic private-public partnership, so that our students can have their hands on something. And the last piece of it is mechanical engineering. So we wanted to get the first thing finished first. So this year we worked on early college, high school, and found 10 kids that took trig and pre-algebra and other academic courses. And I stayed close. I lead the project, and because it's the same company, right? And we're the ones in workforce education that know the business and understand how they roll. And they have an internship this summer in an engineering department, paid full-time. And in the fall, they start to finish their second year of their Associate of Science degree. Again, tuition paid for by the client and a part-time job at the company while they go to school. And then we've engaged 2 universities that they will then next summer also have a full-time job at a higher rate of pay. And they will go to the university to get their tuition paid to finish their mechanical engineering. And both, I don't know if you've ever been an engineer or married to engineers, they have very little hands-on in their programs. So our Associate of Applied Science project is also helping improve work-based learning for our pre-engineering students also. And I'm happy to help with any questions later, but I also am excited to hear from you. Becky, back to you.
Thank you, Linda. I love hearing about those, the high school kids getting the jobs in the summer, that work-based learning before they're out of college. I think that's wonderful. Alicia has joined us. Hi, Alicia.
Hi. Technology is great when it works.
I'm going to hand it over to you, Alicia.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alicia Udy. I'm with Bismarck State College. And so I was going to just talk a little bit about our apprenticeship programming. So Bismarck State College, we have been known for our energy programs on a national basis, and we've been doing apprenticeship programs in that area for a little over 25 years. And while I've been at Bismarck State, I think the things that we have learned and as we've progressed apprenticeship programs, so typically the traditional apprenticeship programming is employers promoting from within, putting them in an apprenticeship program that's maybe administered at their location, and the colleges are often known to do maybe more of that theory training. And so, you know, that's where our apprenticeship program really started. The on the job was done by the employer. We came in, did face-to-face, you know, courses to meet those theory requirements, and that seemed like it was fitting well. As our local industry partners were expanding on a national basis, and the partnerships that we had with them, they began to challenge us of how can you help us meet the apprenticeship programming needs that we have outside of the state of North Dakota. And at that same point in time, we were starting to put a lot more curriculum in an online base, even for our technical programs. And so I think that's really where our apprenticeship programming starting to expand, is that we found ways to deliver some of that theory content online to more than just our local partners, but on a national basis, which then expanded to, well, now how about our employees get credit for this training that they're doing? Because basically what we were doing is taking our degree programs and offering that same curriculum in the non-credit through like Linda alluded to, all these different divisions, offering it through non-credit. And so now how do we merge this together? And I'd say that's been a fun project to watch that evolve of a lot of those needs that they have are in our degree programs, and why not give them opportunity to not only earn a Department of Labor certification, but also earn a college credential. And if the apprenticeship programs are designed to meet those employer needs, sometimes those always don't align exactly with your degree programs. And so that did challenge us in how can we come up with unique degrees? You know, now we almost have customized degrees where you can take courses in our area of, from maybe mechanical maintenance to electrical work to you know, computer programming work, and how can we still form degrees. And so I think when we working with our employers, a couple of things always are at the forefront. What are the skill sets that they need, and then how do we align that? And then if there's a gap within that, can we meet that gap? Or sometimes it was a vendor. I think some of our most successful apprenticeship programs is when it's a joint with the business partner, the college itself, and potentially some specific vendors that we work a lot with. It was like a three-prong approach. Those have really been some of our most successful programming. And even if that apprentice in that that apprenticeship program that we designed for them maybe doesn't earn a full degree. They're on that pathway to earn it. And with employee tuition reimbursement, we have seen a very high percentage of those students or those apprentices actually end up earning a degree at their end because they've like, I've made it this far. I want to complete that degree. So right now, we have over 40 companies on a national basis that we're offering apprenticeship programming for, where typically it's a joint of credit, non-credit courses, potentially vendor, curriculum, and the employers sometimes manage that apprenticeship program, or sometimes we do, as we have that status to be the actual provider with Department of Labor. And so this is really strong in the energy industry as a whole for us. And so now within our Polytechnic mission and us expanding, we just received a grant and we're working in healthcare, which has been very, very interesting and has its challenges, but we love the challenges. And so we're in the midst of developing it for EMT right now, surge tech, and nursing for LPN and ADN. And then on the manufacturing side, looking at a couple of automation technician types of positions for some of our food processing manufacturers in the state of North Dakota. And so, and I think all of them, obviously healthcare has requirements for their credentials and their licensing. So that's a little different, but where I think the manufacturing industry really liked to see the joint skills that we could really customize for them, but still get that into potentially a degree path. Because as an employer, so sometimes that apprenticeship training, so obviously they're hiring these individuals, maybe they're employees that they promoted within, that they're going to put in the apprenticeship program, maybe they're hiring out of our program, out of the college programs, and bringing them on to do the training, and then, work and earn pay and get some more hands-on skills where you're enrolled at BSc. But one thing that they're all probably maybe diversifying a little bit more is using employee tuition reimbursement to support their apprenticeship program training. So now they have, a little bit more funding opportunities to support their program. So that's kind of in a nutshell, what we're trying to do at the college and be unique. I guess one other thing that we have with competency-based apprenticeship programming, we have a couple employers now that we are helping do their assessments for them. So it's instead of the employer doing that assessment to move to the next level, they're actually having us do that assessment. And we have done them both at our campus if we have that equipment and can test those skills on our campus. And we have also done them externally at their job site. So working with them to be able to come on their job site and have our faculty member administer that assessment piece for competency-based movement within their apprenticeship program. So, and that's fairly new for us and mostly in oil and gas, but been a fun project to be able to share with the other sectors, because really you can bring those same models and design work to other sectors.
So Alicia, I don't see any hands up, but I have a couple of questions real quick about that. I had one written down already, but then when you talked about the assessments for, whether their folks can move up, you spoke about credit and non-credit. I'm going to ask about that as well. But what do you do, or do you do anything for those incumbent workers that are going into an apprenticeship and going to your training to assess them before they go in to make sure they're ready? What do you do there?
So that is getting more and more common. And so, initially it was just a theory-based test, which I don't know was always fair to that individual, especially when we're talking very high technical programs. And so, when it was brought to my attention, we should do this, the first thought I had was, if we have an end of a 6-month assessment, it should be the same assessment. I mean, why would it be really any different? And so can we use that design? So those programs that we've established that assessment for, that's the approach that we're going to take, is assess them there, where they're at based off of those other assessments we've designed for the 6-month blocks up. So I think the selling point is that it needs to be hands-on if that's what it's required to be. And I will say we initially started with theory-based testing, and we did not see a high pass rate and success rate, but then those individuals would come into the training program and they were flying through, some of that hands-on training. So I think bringing in that being more a competency-based testing is what I would recommend off of our newly treading water of this topic.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a couple of companies that are starting to ask that as well. as we work towards building our apprenticeship programs. We have a lot, we have a lot of apprenticeship programs in St. Louis. They're mostly around the construction trade. So as we're trying to get them out into manufacturing and other areas, those are some things, some challenges we have. And one, and you touched on it, is the degree or credit versus non-credit. And unlike you, I'm sure found out that the companies or the students don't want to hear about your inside baseball, right? About whether you can do that on credit or you can't do that on credit.
Right.
I think it's great that you guys figured out how to make that work, especially with customized degree programs. I think that's wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit real quick, and I'll quit putting you on the spot then, about your vendor partnerships when in the three-prong approach, and what types of vendors are you talking about, and what's their role there?
Yeah, so the vendors typically has been in the longer apprenticeship programs that are more your 3-4 years. So it's site specific, and in particular, it was like in our system protection apprenticeship program, it was the actual like relays that these individuals were working on. So they wanted like vendor specific training hours to be counted towards their apprenticeship, and it really should have been. And so it was really just working with, where do they belong in the program? And there'd be, there's like basically like a 6-month block that Bismarck isn't even engaged in that programming really with them because they're just with that vendor. So then if we oversee the apprenticeship program, getting all basically those core skills and competencies that are needed, and then reporting that to the Department of Labor and those completion records for them. So that's where that part was. So they were really at the table when we outlined the standards and the outcomes that we wanted, and where they fit in. And I think for the most part, the vendor fits in for a theory versus on the job. Also, just for awareness.
Great, thank you. All right. I said I'd call people out for hoarding, and that's just what I did. Craig, go right ahead.
Well, I'm going to keep Alicia on the spot and ask about the competency-based testing. It sounds like it's a combination of performance testing and written testing. Is that the case? Or is it all testing?
I feel like the competency is leaning more towards all hands-on competency-based versus performance-based versus theory-based. But
and then how so I understand how you use it inside a course for progression to the next step of it's an academic assessment, essentially. It's just performance-based. If people are using that on the front end, are you doing work from a psychometry standpoint to validate those assessments, because those are essentially becoming selection tools at that point? Is that right?
Right. So basically, when we design those assessments, with the employer and who that assessor was going to be, and basically that was like a joint effort too. So the employer was involved in the process of selecting who that particular assessor was. And then they have like a scoring rubric and comments that they have to provide feedback of where it was. And then that assessment is, I will say, thoroughly reviewed with the assessor and the apprentice, or going to be apprentice, and their supervisors, so they can talk through it. I just feel like right now we haven't had any like, oh, that's really close. It was like they can or they can't more, and it is fairly new, but so I think every time we do it too, it's just like little tweaks, because to pull somebody, I will say they're typically have already been employed at that employer, and maybe we're like cross training and cross skilling to that job. And so now what would happen if we pulled somebody off the street that was working for a different employer and coming into their organization? We had always talked about that, and the safety concerns around that, and making sure that they would be comfortable in that environment to assess them. So an individual wouldn't have to do that assessment. It's like if they were pushing that they feel that they should be moved up. But so those are all things, like I said, we're treading new water, but those would be another consideration, is if they're coming in off the street from a different employer, depending on what that skill set is or that job that you're testing on, like, is it safe? Is it a safe environment for them to go and show you those skill sets too?
Thanks.
Linda, I have a question for you. So kind of twofold. You had mentioned that yours were the CNC machining and the mechanical engineering for your work-based learning, right? So those high school kids that are in the summer getting those jobs and working part-time throughout the year. A couple of questions. Were the companies at first hesitant to let high school kids in? Do they have to be 18? And then what kind of feedback have you gotten from the students themselves, and I guess from the companies on those kids that are in their facilities?
You know, I was really excited when NOV came in with their show about who they are and what they do, and they have beautiful videos, and it's so impressive. You're in 30 countries and have 30,000 employees and all this stuff. And the kids were so intimidated. And you forget, if you don't know what a corporation is, and you don't know that when you're in the actual plant, that you're in your work groups, right? And you're around pieces of equipment, small numbers of people. It's not like being in Toyota Stadium or something in Houston. And so we really had to with their feedback, change how we sell the program and the jobs to the students and their parents, because their parents never worked in a larger employer. And the fact that they're in 80 different locations in Houston, not one big, again, Toyota Stadium, was interesting feedback. But they've all stuck with it because they love it, and they realize, just like when you travel abroad, right? People are people everywhere. You have mothers, brothers, sisters, we're all really the same, trying to work and take care of our families. When you get out to work, you can sort of focus on your own work. You don't have to worry about CEOs and CFOs and COOs and all that stuff. And they don't know anything about any of that. The other thing that the employer didn't know are all the problems these kids have. It sounds nice. We also worked with Dell and Intel and a couple companies in 2020, that are all trying to recruit differently, thank goodness. But they don't realize what a wraparound service is. They don't realize that when you're recruiting from a low income area, they might not have a car at all, let alone be able to drive 30 miles to a location, because they don't have gas money, or we all know this stuff, but or daycare. And so we also had to enlighten the employers around the expectations for students. If you're giving people a chance to skill up in an area that doesn't have that in their family. And I don't know about the rest of you, but we always include now a workforce advisor and case manager in grant projects, client projects, someone that is providing case management to a cohort of students for something. We have 26 of them at the college. I just got approval for starting this September to roll over from grant funds, Perkins funds, to hard money advisors that provide case management, separate from general academic advisors, because you're with a student throughout a whole certificate or degree, whether it's CE, credit, AAS, whatever, and you want to get to know your student, help your student, and figure out all those other opportunities for funding or assistance around our community. And the employers finally get that. They don't have the same support. I mean, when I worked in college, I bought jewelry and clothing and gas for my car. My father paid for my college. Wasn't I lucky, right? And so some of these executives in these companies might have had the same thing. They didn't come from areas like this. And the studying is hard. They're in labs, 75% of the time, trying to learn a skill. We don't have tutoring for that. The student has to work with the instructor to practice and practice. You can't send them to the math lab or the English lab or the writing lab. That's not what they're needing. They're needing more time on task to perfect their skills.
Great, thank you. I think that is something we all struggle with. Even in the last few years, I know those barriers that the students have that, right, growing up, those were never on my radar. So I didn't think that was something it's heartbreaking at times, right, to think about what these kids are struggling with, just to try to get through school. So I think that's wonderful that you're kind of opening the eyes of the companies to do that. One more quick question. So you did mention Dell, and I know in your article you talked about Dell wanting to let them know that it's more than just IT jobs at Dell. Real quick, we have our Boeing pre-employment program, and we teach people how to build the airplane to get the entry-level position at Boeing. And we had a bunch of high school kids, and we took them through a tour at Boeing. And we were going from one production spot to the other, and we walked through this cubicle area that, as far as I can see, is beige cubicles. And this high school kid goes, "Oh my gosh, it's just like on TV. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I want to work here." And I thought, okay, weird thing. But if you could ask real quick, how's that going with Dell? Do you know, are they able to get that word out? And then when you're done, I'll hand it off to Craig again. But well, yeah, how's that going?
So Dell started, it's kind of odd, and I don't know if there's anyone, I don't think there's anyone on here from Austin Community College. I mean, Dell's headquartered in Austin, right? That's 3 hours away from us. They were trying to find ways, as Intel is, as Microsoft is, to get programmers hired. But really, they're looking for finding people that could go into business technical sales. And I don't know about in your cities, but business technical sales has become even more important since COVID because of the salespeople my age that have retired. And a lot of times sales folks that are selling hardware or software came out of the industry. Like, Craig has an engineering background. So you take an engineer, you find one with great personality, and you give them sales with bonus pay, right? And it entices them maybe out of engineering or out of IT or something to go sell the products and services. Dell's had a very hard time finding those people out of bachelor degrees or out of engineering degrees or out of IT degrees. So they've come to the community college, and they're giving students an opportunity to, they don't really have hands-on. It's not truly work-based learning from that point, but they're mentoring them through their path at the college to stay close and give them lots of interaction and assistance with some of the things that Harriet was speaking about, just the soft skill kinds of things that are required of students and employees for an awareness. And then they invite them into different sessions to ask questions and interact and do more with young Dell professionals. And then they also came on campus and met with our students, and they're training them virtually, primarily, on their way through a degree path, and in a case management relationship way. So, we talk about work-based learning a lot as being there working on a machine or working in a some sort of center, technology center someplace. And but we're starting to see also this virtual, it is workplace learning. They're learning about the workplace, and they're getting hands-on in a sense from the professionals, almost like an apprenticeship model, right? They're bringing them up, and then they brought them in as interns in the summers. We've had interns go to Chicago. We've had interns go to Oklahoma. We've had interns go to other cities and do some neat things in the summers for those kind of jobs.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it to Craig. But before I do that real quick, then we're going to come around and see if, you guys can share some of the rest of you on what you're doing at your schools. and in your areas around apprenticeships. And Greg, I know you're an architect, Greg Sanders, and you work for a business. If you want to talk about apprenticeships and what those look like, or what you might need from your school, that would be helpful as well. But Craig, go ahead.
Thanks, Becky. And this question could really be directed, it really is directed at the three presenters, but it could be for anybody here. And that is that all the things we're describing are terrific, they're innovative, they're appropriate, they're effective. And they often don't touch as many students as they should. When we have a successful one of these programs, the number of students is often exhilarating and disappointing at the same time, you know. And so as we think about taking these things to scale, for instance, one of the groups that I facilitate here has a goal to have meaningful work-based engagement with every student. Getting there means taking these two markets and kind of ratcheting them up at the same time. So the supply, demand, supply kind of thing. So I'm interested in what you might be doing to increase the number of employers who are engaged in these kinds of activities, and what you're doing to get students more aligned with expecting work-based learning.
So Craig, I can speak to that. That was one of our decisions in terms of trying to integrate it within the curriculum. Kay McKinney has been our mentor on guided pathways. And early in this process, she said, be sure not to make project-based learning something for the lucky few. And we really took that to heart. And that's why we've worked so hard to integrate it into the curriculum, because our ultimate goal is that every student at College of the Canyons within their first year would have at least one section that had a project-based learning assignment embedded in that curriculum. And so it's ambitious, but we are gaining footing in that. And then from that, it really allows us to have an interface with the student beyond just the faculty member and the student, and that the case management people that Linda was referring to, we're allowed to bring in our job developers and our career counselors to be able to interface with the students to start that arduous journey of getting them career ready. So making, assisting them in getting a profile on our employment platform, developing a LinkedIn profile. We now also have access to a digital e-portfolio, but where they're really beginning to take those skills that they're learning and mastering, and then creating their own brand awareness. So as they then transition to internships, maybe an apprenticeship, and eventually employment, that they have a good grasp on how to market themselves for those employment opportunities. Because the reality of it is, that's the name of the game now. It's not like when I came out of college and it was the resume and cover letter, and you actually went to the place that you were seeking employment with and shook hands with the HR director and said, hey, I'm very interested in this job. Everything is digital now. So how do we present and help our students to master this digital world and create a brand and awareness so that employers are attracted to hiring them?
Thank you, Harriet. Alicia or Linda, did either of you want to say anything to that, or?
About bringing it to scale, I agree with you 100%, Craig. It's for the last few years, because of all the federal rules and regulations and legal items, we've been taking co-op as an option. We don't have co-op as a requirement in any program. Of course, clinicals are required in healthcare. because it's been so hard, especially in manufacturing and oil and gas, because you screw up that $80,000 piece of equipment. It's hard. It's hard to have interns in companies. So what we have spent our time on is trying to inform employers. Internships aren't just in the summer. Our students need jobs. They work while they go to school. They don't need a job 2 years from now. They need a job now. They're working now, and they need a job while they're going to school. So because we get to lead these chancellor advisory councils, one for IT, one for manufacturing and energy, one for commercial and industrial construction, blah, blah, blah. We have 7 of them. We have 50 about really good partners in each of those. And so with our 50-member workforce council and our 14 areas of study deans, we've been working deliberately with these companies to set up part-time jobs while the student's going to college. Because it's easier for us to do it that way than to go, okay, here's course 1302 something or other. Here's the learning outcomes they have to meet. Here's the blah, blah, blah. That's difficult. It's easier to try and find them these part-time job opportunities, internships, to give them some work-based learning. Just this morning, I was on with hospital. We're doing a lot with hospitals, and because of our corporate training arm, our customized training, like an apprenticeship, we're in Texas. Apprenticeship isn't the most popular thing registered with the federal government. We're an independent bunch here in Texas, but apprentice-like programs are very popular. And moving people out of CE certificates into credit, getting them from there into better jobs, and then bringing in corporate training to customize incumbent worker training, like an apprenticeship program and a tiered approach.
Thank you, Linda. Would anyone else like to share about what you're doing in your area or your field, and or what you might like to see from a community college in your area?
This is Greg Sanders, and I'm sorry, I'm doing this from my phone and it's a little weird. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand or get into the chat or get my video on. We design a lot of apprenticeship spaces for community colleges. So I'm really interested in understanding a little bit more about what folks think is different or needed from their spaces that are different from, I'll call it conventional vocational training. Every single one of so we've done 3 in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. Seems like we're doing them more and more, and it's becoming a really important part of curriculum. But every college that we've worked with has essentially made up the curriculum as they've gone, which is exciting from the design standpoint and stuff. It's exciting, but it would be great to have more principles. And I think they're just dying for principles. We've found, the most important thing, of course, is flexibility and adaptability and all that stuff. But partner integration is probably the part that's overlooked the most. And I think that if there were ways to get partners more vocal about their needs early in the design process, before when the project has become funded, but it's not yet, really completed, that would be great. And I think that when we've seen some really successful apprenticeship training programs, like the stuff at Gateway in Wisconsin, those were great. We've seen companies like Snap-on be extremely engaged in the project, and I think that makes a huge difference. But the ones that I've done in the Pacific Northwest, the partners, even though the colleges have tried to engage them, the partners sort of come on board after, and there's always some sort of rejiggering that I think is disappointing for the colleges. So I guess I'm not sure if that's a question or feedback, but it's my experience.
No, I think that's great. I know we struggle with that here as well. And what I know, we certainly don't want to do it at no college does is want to go to an industry and tell them what they need, and tell them what we have, and that's what they need. So we try to do that as well. I'm not going to say we're 100% successful at it, getting them in from the very beginning, the ground floor. But we certainly something we are focusing on more as we go with apprenticeships and down that apprenticeship road rather than kind of our standard programs. Greg Jones, I hate to put you on the spot, but I just did. And can you talk about how you guys have you partnered, as on apprenticeships, and what does that look like?
Well, at AMT, we represent a bunch of member companies in the manufacturing technology space. So we don't specifically partner on apprenticeships. I am on the NIMS board of directors, and at NIMS, we also advocate for modernizing apprenticeships in the manufacturing industry. We know a lot of our member companies do that. But at AMT, we're not specifically engaged in apprenticeship programs.
I know we're working kind of what Alicia mentioned at St. Louis with a company, and we're going to be the sponsor of that apprenticeship, and NIMS is going to be a big part of that, and they've been working with them on what those job profiles should look like, things like that. So I know NIMS is big in the apprenticeship game.
I know for our recent heavy equipment program, we went through like the Built Academy that Cord has, and I will say that's probably been one of the most successful projects where you can identify all those knowledge, skills, and abilities, because going into that, I think what we gave them to score on, so basically it's like you put it in front of them and they have to score a 1 to 5 if they want it. When we gave them the list, I was on the understanding all of them were 5s, like, because that was just conversation and other programs I review, they're like, yes, yes, yes. But when it came down to it and they actually had a vote on it, a 1 to 5, we found ways that we could remove content. So I think that was a really successful project that I would want to integrate that into future apprenticeship program development.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Harriet.
We've used the Built in really launching our Advanced Technology Center. It was eye-opening, where we thought we were hitting the nail on the head. We had big differences with industry, and it was, I think, the best thing about the Built process is that it's not personal. It's very scientific. And so the data is authentic and real. And I think it helped us to really set really ground zero then for how we went forward on the skills that we were going to concentrate on. And industry really appreciated the level of participation that they were able to contribute to that they had not been able to do before. Thank you.
And Craig, I'm going to hand it back to you. I saw your note in the chat that you found NIMS to be very helpful as well with that conversation with companies. But we only have about 5 minutes left, maybe 6. So Craig, if you want to kind of get a wrap up started for us. Sorry, Craig Lamb.
Pick a Craig, any Craig.
Craig, any Craig?
We have
Craig, do you have
three
any,
of them on hand
do you have
today.
any closing comments for yourself, Craig Lamb?
Well, I really found this valuable. I think there are a lot of best practices, and what NCATC does is bring people to the table to share those. The one thing I always say that I love about community colleges is that we're non-competitive. And I know that we always try to be bigger than each other when we try to do those kinds of things. That's healthy competition. But what I mean is we don't compete for market. In order for Harriet to get bigger, I don't have to get smaller. so I can share what I know, what I do, how I do it, and not risk it damaging me. You know, in other business lines, in other industries, that doesn't happen. And so I've always enjoyed the collegiality of community colleges and the helpful way that people work together. So I hope that a lot of you use this as a jumping off point instead of an ending of a webinar, and reach out to one another to see if you can follow up on some of these conversations and leverage some of these best practices. So thanks to all the presenters from my standpoint, and I'll give it to the next Craig.
Linda's got to jump off. I know she's got a meeting in 5 minutes or less with another big group. And so, Linda, I want to say thank you very much for your expertise as always, for being with us as well today. And we'll see you on the flip side of the 4th of July. I again echo everything Craig just said and everybody's amazing feedback today. These are truly the champions in our workforce world across the nation, and I really am so thrilled that most of them on the screen are on the board of directors leading the way for national best and promising practices. I put in the chat another initiative that NCATC was part of for 3.5 years with the American Association of Community Colleges, and over 850 small and medium-sized companies and 4 large ones like Lincoln Electric, IBM, and Lockheed Martin. But those are great best practices on that link for the virtual network of AACC's expanding apprenticeship. We had a goal of 16,000 new apprentices in 3 years, and they eclipsed it at 21,500 thousand and still growing. So, and again, 85% of those new apprentices were small and medium-sized companies, which is really cool. So thank you for all the great information you all shared today. I will say that next quarter, we'll be talking about Industry 4.0, 5.0, X.0. We're just going to keep it going because it's a hockey stick. As technology keeps going, it just never ends, right? So that'll be our next one of these membership drop-ins on September 28th. It's the same time, 2 o'clock Eastern time. And in the future, we'll also be talking about the competency-based education that was brought up several times here today. There's a very close relationship between WBL and CBL, right? Because it's all applied learning. So that's what we're really all about, is trying to get colleges and even high schools and companies to come together around applied learning. So I think you all summed it up so perfectly well with all of your different expertise. I think Linda again, Harriet, and Alicia, thank you so much for your wisdom for all of us today. I'm going to put one more thing in the chat is our conference is coming up in Wichita in September. And there's a link there for NCATC 35. It's our 35th anniversary conference. Again, I know our attendance was light today because a lot of people are already starting their 4th of July holiday, but I want to thank you all for taking your time to be here with us today. And this is recorded, so please share it out once you come back from your holiday celebration, and we'll keep this going. Again, a great day for apprenticeship and work-based learning. Thank you all. Have a good one.